Welcome to the InCamera podcast with Alvin Tedjo, the big city podcast about big city issues and big city solutions. Municipalities are interesting in that there are so many across Ontario, 444 to be exact, and each of them are trying to solve a similar set of problems, but often coming up with different solutions that fit their local needs. What works for a big city like Toronto or Ottawa might not work for smaller cities like London or Vaughan. Cities like Windsor will have completely different issues than what we have here in Mississauga. Cities are also stuck with a lot of problems that the provincial or federal government just don't want to deal with. Housing, infrastructure, homelessness, just to name a few, are dealt with by your city, often without serious funding from either Parliament or Queen's Park. As a Mississauga councillor, it's always interesting to stay up to date with what other municipalities are doing, especially smaller cities with fewer resources, as they are the ones that come up with the most innovative solutions to our common problems. This week, we'll be chatting with His Worship, Cam Guthrie, the now three-term mayor of Guelph. Mayor Cam is not afraid to take on the big issues. In our conversation, we talk about the need to build more homes and how Guelph went from one of the slowest building approval times in Ontario to one of the fastest. We also talk about dealing with NIMBYs and how local city councils can better deal with opposition to the common good and get more homes built faster. I asked Cam about his recent comments asking the Premier to use the notwithstanding clause to deal with homeless encampments. A controversial take, to say the least. What surprised me, however, was not only Cam's compassion for his residents, his homeless residents, but also his straightforward desire to help his residents in need where other levels of government have let them down. On the personal side, Cam isn't just the mayor. He's a drummer, a vintage blender collector, and ultimately another dad who wants his kids to have the same opportunities he and his wife had to live in the same city where they grew up. Now, Mississauga isn't Guelph, but we can certainly learn a lot from what Guelph has done. So, if you have any questions or suggestions for the show, feel free to email me at alvin.tedjo@mississauga.ca. And now, our conversation with Mayor Cam. Welcome to the InCamera podcast with Alvin Tedjo. I thought that this was a fun sort of name for something that we can talk about municipal government, municipal politics, big city issues, big city problems, big city solutions, hopefully. And today I'm really excited to have Cam Guthrie, the mayor of Guelph, third-term mayor. Congratulations and welcome to the pod.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much for having me. Haven't seen, your setup before, and now I know how wonderful it is. So yeah, thanks for having me.
So Cam, you and I connected, it was a year or two ago, I think. I only got elected 2 years ago, but we started moving on some issues, especially around transit. We did free transit for kids. We really wanted to make that more accessible. We made some moves on fourplexes, and then you reached out, or I think we ran into each other at some point.
Yeah, I can't remember if we ran into each other at some common event that
AMO, Big City
municipal
Mayors.
folks always run into each other at, but definitely started to really connect with you online because we're cut from the same cloth a little bit, especially around housing, transit as well, and so we started probably liking each other's tweets, and then it became a little bit more of a conversation, and I've always liked what you're doing and what you're standing up for, and so we seem aligned, which is great.
Oh, I appreciate that. I really wanted to get you on here because I wanted to talk about how you've been able to make the progress that you've made in your city, because I see Guelph as a city that it's a smaller city than Mississauga, but I'd say hits above its weight because you have the priorities of understanding that we need to build more housing, we need to expand transit, we need to make our cities more livable, we need to deal with a lot of big city issues. You're in your third term now, so I don't know if you can walk through a bit of your journey to the mayor's office.
Sure. How
it's been, what are some of the biggest challenges you faced?
Wow, the journey. It was a cold and windy night. I would say, so I can't believe I'm even the mayor at all. I mean, it's just astounding every day. I'm like, wow, I can't believe I get to do this. But it's, I was, before getting into politics, I was I was an insurance broker for like 16 years. And I think I built a lot of trust with people in the community, like several, families and several 100,000 type of policies I would be insuring people on, like their most expensive stuff, right? Their houses, their cars, their businesses. And when things went wrong, they would be calling me, right? There was a fire or something. I got into a car accident or something like that. So you build like a lot of trust with people in that. So, during that whole time, I started seeing stuff that was happening at the city, and, some stuff you like, some stuff you don't like in the direction that things are going. And I thought I would sort of just put my hat in to be a city councilor. And in the first time I ran for city council, I actually lost. And a lot of people. Oh, really? Okay, so we have more in common. Yeah. So a lot of people don't know that. They often are a little bit like, oh, you're the mayor and you're like so successful or something. And it's like, yeah, I lost the first time I ran for mayor, and you learn a lot when you lose. And so 4 years later, I put my name back in as a city councilor and I won. And then right after that, I put my name forward to run for mayor, and I've been the mayor, as you just said. This is my third term now. So that's kind of how I got there. And I would say from what's been happening, especially I do have, like, just by default, a little bit of sort of that 10-year span now as mayor, seeing where things started and where it is now. And amongst the issues that are happening in cities, it's very interesting. I'm doing a lot of reflection about how things actually were 10 years ago. And it's odd to say that, because sometimes when people do like a reflection, they're thinking like, 40, 50 years ago. But there has been so many changes in the last 10 years. And I would say that we're blessed with like great staff at the city of Guelph, great people, of course, and businesses. And I would just say there has been some common threads even over my time of council, of councilors that have also been there for a long time as well. So they have good corporate history. But we got a sprinkle of new councilors now that are bringing new and fresh ideas. And that's been very helpful. So Guelph is kind of situated very geographically really well, kind of along the 401 corridor, just outside of that GTA area. We're that medium-sized city that is
so how many people are we talking about?
150,000. The province is forcing us to grow to just over 200,000 in 30 years. So that's our population target. So we're that medium-sized city now where I think we can try things a little bit different. We're a little bit more flexible because we're that size. And then we're just very well kind of sought after because of our geographical location, University of Guelph, close to the border, close to a lot of manufacturing. And so it's a very wonderful place.
And you're a single tier municipality.
We are a single tier municipality.
I'm very jealous. I'm very jealous.
Yes, we have no region to kind of answer to. We do it all. It's actually very interesting. During budget time, I will always get emails every time. Why is Kitchener's property tax 3.5% and yours is higher? And I'm like, yeah, did you add in Waterloo region? Oh no, I sometimes get like, why is Mississauga's rate this? I'm like, oh, did you put in Peel region on top of that?
Right.
Oh no, I didn't know that. So it's interesting. Sometimes people don't understand that. Yeah, Guelph is a single tier municipality. We do it all.
Why is that? How did Guelph get single
I
tier
have
status?
no idea. No idea at all. Just the way it is. I mean, the only unique thing is that the county of Wellington, which is
Surrounding
encompasses
Guelph,
us, and Guelph is in the middle of that. They are our legislated social services manager.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of that oversight from them, but we don't do the big regional stuff at all. So we do police, we do transit, we do waste pickup, whereas often at regions those are all done separately from the smaller cities.
So how do you think that your city has changed in the last 10 years?
Well, population is the big one. We're one of the fastest growing, not only in Ontario, but in Canada. I just think that, there's been a lot of pressure on infrastructure, housing. Our city's also unique because we're a groundwater community. So we don't have like a pipe in the ground that runs out to a lake and can suck the water out of a lake and use it. And so
I do. Those pipes are in my neighborhood.
Yeah, I know. So we kind of have a lot of finite resources around water, which can really restrict the amount of growth that we have. And so that's a very unique thing about Guelph. And so trying to fit in the population densities that and numbers that the province wants us to fit in with some of those constraints, not only from our resources like water, but also just the boundaries can be difficult. So I think population growth has been huge in Guelph in the last 10 years. And that has caused, a lot of decision making that we're trying to do, not for today, but like for 20 years, for 30 years down the road. We're voting on stuff for, probably when I'm definitely not the mayor, right? We're voting on stuff today that has nothing to do with today. We're doing with the stuff that's going to be 20, 30, 40 years down the road.
So what's in store for the future for you? Like, do you think, I got a Hazel McCallion bobblehead here. I heard you have one in your office
I
too.
do. I have one, and I have a picture of me and her together. I was always very, very fond of Hazel.
She was in the office for 36 years.
Yeah.
I don't know if you plan on being around that long.
Oh, well, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know if my family will let me. It's I have a really fond few memories of her. Actually, this is really interesting. I'm glad you just asked about her. I was in the mayor's office the first day after I won. After inauguration, like after sworn in, I call it sworn at ceremony, and the first phone call I ever got was from Hazel.
Really?
Yep, dead serious.
Wow.
My EA said, "Cam, the phone's for you," and I had this empty mayor's room, empty mayor's desk, just a phone on it, and I'm like, "Hello, Cam speaking." And it was Hazel, and she called me to congratulate me. And I had never talked to her before, at all. And the fact that she called the mayor of Guelph to say congratulations was unbelievable. I will always remember that.
That's wild. That's wild more in the context that I know when you got elected in 2014.
Yeah.
That's also when she retired.
Yes.
So that was her first day not being the mayor.
I guess you're right.
And she was still reaching out.
Yep.
To other mayors and saying, congratulations, I'll help you, call me whenever you can.
Yeah, and that's exactly what she said.
Yeah.
And she talked about some kind of connections to Guelph, and then just a few years later, I think she went on to the board of directors for a retirement old age home, and she did some events in Guelph at one of those old age homes that we had, the seniors residence. And so I went out to a couple events there, and actually that's where the picture behind my desk is of me and her, is at one of those events in Guelph or whatever. Yeah.
Nice.
So.
Yeah. That's another Mississauga connection.
Yeah, there you go.
For Guelph and Mississauga. So you started talking about housing, and I want to dive into this more because you've been one of the most progressive leading voices on housing options, I think, amongst big city mayors here in Ontario. And, maybe talk a little bit about where that comes from, but also, some of your, what I'll say is more common sense approach to how we build housing.
Well, where it comes from is pretty personal. So my wife and I, Rachel and I, we got married very young. So she was 19. I was 22, and we bought a house when we were married. Mm-hmm. It was $125,000. I needed to get under $10,000 as a down payment, and I remember scraping together the down payment. I sold my drum set. I sold my baseball card collection. I had a whole bunch of stuff that I sold on eBay to make money for the down payment. And at the time, in insurance, I had a salary of $21,700 a year. I will always remember that was my first salary job. And my wife, Rachel, she worked part-time at Ladies a Champ, clothing and athletic store in the mall.
Okay.
And we got a mortgage.
Wow.
And now, fast forward to today. We've been married 25 years. We have a son who is 22, living in my basement. We have a daughter that is 20, living in another one of our rooms. And so our children are the same freaking age that Rachel and I were when we got married and we were able to afford a home. And there is no freaking way my kids today will ever be able to do that.
Right.
And so it's personal for me, and I'm quite upset about it, because I love my kids, but I kind of want them to leave the house. And I just look at the journey that they will be on is like, it's almost impossible. And not just for owning a home, renting.
Right.
They can't.
What's the rent in Guelph?
Oh, Guelph is very high. It's very high. We've been consistently sort of in and out of that top 10 high rent list across Canada. You know, a 1-bedroom in Guelph is 2,000, 2,100.
Wow.
2-bedroom can be 2,300, 2,400. I mean, these are unaffordable. And, you know, there can be some reasons around that. We're a university town and a college town, you know, some stuff like that. So rents are sometimes different in those types of scenarios. But so that's why it's kind of personal for me. And I say all of that, you know, not even talking as the mayor. But now I'll talk as the mayor. So as the mayor, I hear those same stories.
Right.
But it's not just for young people. It's for seniors. They can't even afford to downsize.
Right. Where are they going to go?
Where are they going to go?
Yeah.
And newcomers and those that are, you know, have really struggled with poverty coming out of COVID, just straight up affordability issues. Where can they go? And so I just been harping on this issue of a lot of it is supply, just increasing the supply of all types of housing. It doesn't matter to me really what it is. We just got to get more supply. And so, yeah, I have been one to believe that we need a lot less government, and I think we need a lot less government regulations. I think councils need to delegate more and more to professional staff,
Absolutely.
Get out of the way.
Yep.
I think we need to have permissive zoning like you wouldn't believe to just allow more and more shovels to go in the ground. And you know, I just think we just have to have that type of an atmosphere in the city. We call it get to yes. So we have a get to yes attitude in Guelph. So we don't start with, no, you can't do that. We start with, how can we get to yes?
I have so many questions.
and so we're doing well.
Yeah.
But it's not enough. It's still not enough. And so there's a responsibility on the municipal end. There's a responsibility on the province and the feds too. But I can't continue to be like, well, it's just a provincial issue or it's just a federal issue. Like, we have to look in the mirror too.
You have to own it.
And we have to own it, and we have to try to help people. And that would include my own kids.
So, I mean, that's fantastic. Thank you for walking through that. I know one of your success stories has been bringing down time, like permit times, application times, approval times.
Yep.
I want to know how you did that, because I think the story that I heard was that, you know, an application could take 3 years, and then you narrowed it down to 2, and then 1, and then 6 months. Walk us through how we got there.
I think it would be a few things. I think I'll start with like the leadership of some of the people in the planning department. So staff.
Yeah.
Okay.
But on your direction.
Well, sure. But I mean, I want to give credit to,
Sure.
I mean, very authentically, I want to give credit to staff. And there's a cultural issue. Now, maybe did I influence a little bit of that cultural issue? Yeah, sure. Okay. Maybe. And my council colleagues too. But you know, we wanted to put a lot of emphasis on, like, we gotta get shovels in the ground. And so I would start with sort of the culture, and inside City Hall is important. Secondly, I would say that, you know, one of the big sort of kick in the pants for municipalities was from the provincial government. I do want to give them credit around, I think at the time it was Bill 108, Bill 109, not to get into the weeds, but it was about basically timelines that municipalities had to adhere to get things out the door, or we would be penalized. We would lose permit fees. We would lose other fees. And so it kind of lit a little bit of a fire to get some things done. And that meant we had to change some processes. I firmly believed that. And I think that I was very supportive at the time when those types of regulations and legislation came out for municipalities to adhere to. And then I would just say the third thing is that we as a council, there has not been one application that has come forward that we've said no to. Not one. In this whole term.
Wow.
Yep. Which is, I think, a cultural shift and change. So I also have done a couple of things too, where we are now, again, not to get into the weeds, but this has been helpful. And maybe you guys do this here too. I don't know, but we will have the public meeting and the decision meeting at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
And we will also, I've also said to staff, if you have an application that's ready for a recommendation, don't wait till the next month for a planning meeting. You bring it immediately to council. I'll even call a special meeting of council to say yes.
Yeah.
So that's, again, a little bit of a cultural change, a little bit of a process change.
We weren't there when I started. We're there now.
Yeah.
We are doing those things at the same time.
So, I mean, in 2023, we did very well. We met the criteria for the building faster fund. We got the big check. I call it the Happy Gilmore check. That you can kind of put in your car. And so
you put it in your giant wallet.
So we got that big check from the government because we met the criteria. But to be blunt, we're not going to probably meet it for 2024.
I don't think anyone is.
Yeah, I had a developer meeting today, and it was they're all saying the same thing. It's the financial climate. It's no one's buying, no one's pre-buying. It's just completely dried up. So I'm hoping that fingers aren't being pointed from federal or provincial governments like they have been in the past.
Well, we'll see. We got some elections coming up.
Yeah, I know that it's like municipalities' faults because it's
especially for a municipality
fair.
like yours that has done so much to change the culture and has actively been working towards making this faster and sort of acknowledging we will not be the problem.
Yeah,
we are not going to be why housing that gets built. We're going to get out of the way. We're going to make sure we do everything properly and as quickly as possible. And I really appreciate that.
I'll just say one extra thing that I found has been pretty good too is that I say we want to create an arena where anyone can say we are the problem.
Right.
Like I want to hear that.
Yeah.
Staff want to hear that.
Yeah.
Like you need to tell us. So tell us when something's going off the rails. You need to let us know because we want to learn from that so that we can fix it, not just for that developer. And by the way, when I say the word developer, that can be a nonprofit developer too.
Yep. Get to yes though. That's what you're
get to yes, and we want to make sure that we can move forward on for the next projects for them as well. So you gotta know when to tell the cook at the restaurant that they made a bad meal, or they're just gonna keep making bad meals.
Right.
Same thing with applications in housing. You got to know when you've done something wrong so you can fix it and make it better for everybody else after that person.
That's a great perspective to have, and I think a way to advance some of the solutions that are needed in order to change the way it's getting done because it's not getting done properly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But the other challenge that I wanted to ask you about, because you were talking about this council, which kind of makes it sound like you had previous councils that probably didn't pass everything that was put in front of them.
Correct. Yeah.
And there are challenges with residents, existing neighborhoods. I've seen your Twitter feed. You're very engaging. You're very transparent. You communicate with people. I think you answer every text personally. It looks like it.
I every tweet I try. Sometimes I'm a little quieter.
But there's
depending on the issue. But
there is still that challenge of bringing people along.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I don't want to just call them NIMBYs, but I mean, let's say people who are not against, who are not for housing. So how are you able to continue moving forward the way you are? Did the council composition change in order for that to be more supportive, or did they also come along? Because these are some of the struggles that we've had, not just in Mississauga, I think anywhere in Ontario, right, where we have this weird relationship where we get elected by a neighborhood of people who obviously want what's in their best interests, and then we have this almost antagonistic mandate to impose changes on them. Right. And put more housing and put more things. And then we have to try to find ways to bring them along, or we just take up their fight and then try to block it and be obstructionists.
Yes.
How have you dealt with that?
So I think potentially I would say there's some new members of council that are just a new perspective. So that, yes, because in the previous term, there was definitely some applications turned down that in my view should not have been turned down. And, went to the land tribunal and the city lost, so
surprise.
So it needs, there was some of that's where I think that cultural shift has definitely changed even amongst council members this term. I would say the best remedy against NIMBYism is to not give the NIMBYs the chance to promote their NIMBYism. What I mean by that is if you can create the zoning that makes it permissible,
right,
they can't even complain.
That's right.
In fact, it doesn't even come to council.
That's right.
Because it's already permissible. So have a good day.
Yeah.
So where I'll give you an example, and I'm sure
So are you trying to change the OP to be more permissible?
we did that
the official
in our
plans,
comprehensive zoning
Yeah.
plans. I'll give you an example. We before our comprehensive zoning was all changed in the last few years, we had a lot of supportive housing that we wanted to build for people most vulnerable, right? While you tell a community even close to where they live that you want to have supportive housing there for homeless people, you're going to get a lot of NIMBY types out.
Yeah, I'm building a supportable housing project in my neighborhood, and
and
it was already pre-zoned.
Oh, well, you were ahead of us then. But now we took the learnings from that and said we can't have 2 hours of delegations against homeless people. So we're going to change the zoning. So now it's permissible. It's not a separate zoning issue. And so I think that's the best remedy, and the best thing that you can do is just not make it a thing that's easy to have NIMBYism on. The second thing I would just say is I've called it out. So I've called it out in the council meetings. So the delegates will come forward and I'll say, look, I respect that you've come here and you've said the following 5 things that you want to say that you don't like or whatever. I will just say, in my opinion, it seems like a lot of NIMBY. And people don't like it when you say it, but you just kind of call it out. You just call it out. And I think it starts to make it a little bit more strong stance against that type of attitude. Because there is a fine line where there's legit concerns that, you want to hear. Anyone can speak on those issues. And then it's stuff that is just purely the NIMBY bingo card. Parking, children, safety, shadows, more shadows, right? And so I just feel like you got to call it out.
It's we should make a bingo card.
There is one already.
I would love to see that.
You just Google NIMBY bingo card. for everyone to know, I've never used one like in the middle of a meeting, but they do exist. And if I could just say one last thing is stories.
Yeah.
If you can show stories, like, I mean, I hope that my story I told about my own kids makes people go, But there's a story of a senior that needs help. There's a story of kids, or a university student, or young married couple, or etc. that are struggling. Like those types of stories, they can help promote a more let's build all types of housing culture in your community. And that can sometimes go better than just the elected mayor and councilors telling everyone they got to build housing.
Right.
So sometimes promoting stories of like real neighbors, real coworkers and friends in a community that are struggling, like use those stories. Let their voice be the one to explain what's going on. It doesn't have to be the mayor and council.
I've tried to use that a lot and sort of make it more relatable, right?
Yes.
Who am I talking to? Okay. Do you have kids? Do you have grandkids?
Yeah.
How did you get here?
Yep.
Right?
100%.
What do you want for those folks?
Yep.
And even if they don't, I'm like, I try to find any little thing that can tie into them. Okay, so maybe you don't have kids, or maybe you don't care what happens to your neighbors.
Yep.
You are getting older and you need health care. Where is your nurse going to live? Where is
right.
your PSW going to live? Right?
Yep.
Where is your care worker going to be, and how are they going to have access to your place if they have to live 90 minutes away for something affordable?
100%.
Right? So I guess that's, a great way to try and engage people and hopefully bring them along.
Yep.
Some people are more convincible than others, and some people I guess put up that barrier and will just refuse.
Do you know what else I'll do? It's just one extra tip. I will sometimes, after the project is done, I will go back and I'll knock on the doors of the ones that complained before it started. And just to authentically say, how's it going?
Right.
Is it as bad as you thought it was?
Right.
You have no idea how many have been like, yeah, it's not that bad. Right? But because the fear of the unknown is what propels people to start conjuring up all the issues that they think a new development's going to have. And I do that a lot. And sometimes, especially with infill, 4 units as of right, things like that, I will actually send people in another part of the community that are freaking out about the exact same development. I'll say, hey, why don't you drive by this street
and take a look
at because what's being proposed on your street is already done on that street. And I've heard people go, hey, Cam, I went and looked. You're right. It's not that bad. I'm like, well, that's what's going to be on your street.
Right.
And so, again, if you can sort of send people away or to hear stories that aren't coming from the mayor, sometimes that goes better.
I've been trying to use an example with the supportive housing that we're trying to build.
Yeah.
There's an adjacent sort of low density, but I mean, it's 5 stories and it's a lot of condos. And to say, your project was also opposed by your neighbors.
Yeah, I know. I've said that before too.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, I know you're opposing these guys, but these guys are also going to be your neighbors.
I said that once. I remember one development where at the end of the delegations, I said, just so you know, about 8 years ago, the neighbors beside you also came here and told us that we didn't want your house there.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true.
So Cam, you told us a little bit about your life in terms of, where you are now, how you became mayor. You've got 2 kids.
Yep.
Yeah. You've got some other interests here. I hear you're going to Windsor for some records.
Yeah.
What are some of your, because you're a lot of fun. You're a guy to hang out with.
Yeah. I'm a music. Well, I'm a drummer. So some people would say that's not a musician. But I've been in bands like my whole life. I've been, tons of bands, done some recordings, like to try to produce albums for other artists and stuff like that on the side, and been doing that my whole life. Like really, I've been playing drums since I was like 14 years old. So
did you grow up in Guelph?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was born in Collingwood, and then when I was 4, I came back to Guelph. So I can't say the whole born and raised part, but the raised part, yes, Guelph. So I love music, and I love records. I've been collecting records for like ever. I'm a big garage sale guy and thrifter. So
I've heard you go around the neighborhood Saturday mornings.
Oh yeah, forget it. Like,
everyone's like, "Oh, where's the mayor? He's at a garage sale."
Yeah. You need me for a ribbon cutting? Sorry, can't. I'm at a garage sale. Yeah. In fact, I did a ribbon cutting at a garage sale one day. It was the best. So, anyways, I'm a big thrifter, big garage sale guy, and I love collecting weird, crazy stuff. Everyone knows that of me, and it's not something that will ever change.
So, what's some of the unique pieces that you've got?
From a records point of view, or
sure, or things that you've picked up at a garage sale.
Okay, I'm going to tell a really weird story right now. So, if anyone starts to get to know me, there's this thing about me that I collect vintage blenders. Okay, everyone just calm down for a moment. So, I found like an old chrome vintage blender, like, I don't know, years ago for like $2 at a garage sale. And then all of a sudden there was like another one another year I got for like $5 at a garage sale. And I just put them on this shelf in my garage. So then when people would come by, they'd be like, "Do you collect blenders or something?" Ha 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 ha. Well, now we'll come home. Rachel and I will come home, and there'll be a random vintage blender just sitting on my porch. Rachel will come home from like church, and she'll be like, "This is for you," with a bag, and inside, vintage blender. So
people know the mayor likes vintage blenders.
Apparently.
Yeah.
I mean, I never plug them in. I never try them. I just put them on a shelf in my garage. But to this day, I have about 15 to 20 vintage blenders on a shelf in my garage. So everyone comes by and they're all like, "Wow, vintage blenders, eh?"
What's the most vintage blender you've got?
I have no idea. It's avocado green. I know that much.
Okay. That's fun.
So I also collect Star Wars stuff. Our son's name is Anakin. So
oh, nice.
We're big Star Wars fans. And music, drums, percussion, Star Wars stuff, comics.
Yeah.
I've always been into comics.
Did you go to the University of Guelph?
No, I didn't go to university at all, actually.
Okay.
I went to Sir Sanford Fleming College in Peterborough for a 2-year sporting goods business diploma.
Nice.
So it was a business course, but it was all around the sporting goods industry.
Yeah.
Like if you would work for a sports team or you'd work for a sports company like
right.
Bauer or Nike. And so when I got out of college, I started my own like little sales business doing repping like different sports companies. So like Gatorade and like High Sierra backpacks and skateboarding and BMX companies with their clothing and stuff like that. Did that for a while, just like a couple of years until I got into insurance.
Right. Nice.
Yeah.
One of the things I learned yesterday, I was hanging out with some old friends. We all used to work in the Ministry of Colleges and Universities. The new Minister of Colleges and Universities has a college degree like yourself.
Yeah.
And everyone's fairly sure that he's the first Minister of Training Colleges and Universities
with a
college degree.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a totally different perspective to the sector. Right. And they're like, he's really refreshing. He's bringing something in that they haven't seen before.
It's interesting. When I was invited to the first kind of University of Guelph graduation ceremony as mayor. And so you line up in this big, huge gym and they want to
give you robes.
Give the robes. And then there's the like the colors of the collar thing.
Yep.
I don't even know what it's called that they put on you.
They're hoods. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
And I guess the colors represent sort of
right.
the degree you have.
Yeah.
And so I got the black robe thing, and then they went to put the collar with the colors on, and they're like, "What do you need?" I'm like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." And they're like, "Oh, like, what's your degree?" And I'm like, I didn't go to university. And they're like, "You didn't go to university?" So, anyways, it's been kind of funny that I just go up with just the black robe.
You could also wear your chains of office.
I guess I could. Yeah, I don't actually wear that, eh?
No.
No, I bet you I've worn the chain of office 5 times in 10 years.
Really?
I never wear
Our
it.
mayors used to wear it at every meeting.
No.
At every council meeting.
No.
Yeah.
I remember a little, like, at a budget meeting once a year maybe, or at inauguration night, and that's like it. I remember once I was meeting a mayor that was coming from Italy to visit Guelph. And I was walking down the stairs, and the mayor got out of the car on the street and started walking in the front door. And he like, his entourage didn't see me, and he was wearing the sash, like the Italian sash type of thing.
Yeah.
And I like quickly backed up, ran up to the clerk's department. I'm like, "Where's my chain of office? Where is it?" You know. So they put it on me, and then I came down the stairs. "Hi, how are you?" Just to try to kind of fit the part. But I don't. I'm not a suit and tie type of mayor, and that's not the type of guy I am. So I don't wear it.
How do you reckon people call you your worship?
No, I don't like that. Yeah. And you know what? Honestly, everyone calls me Mayor Cam.
Okay.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mayor Cam. Yeah. I like Cam, but if they want to call me something, Mayor is good.
I feel like people have that urge. They have the desire
No, they do,
to
and I
use
understand it.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's a respect for the position.
especially staff.
Yeah. And
when I first started here
totally
too,
get it.
people would always say counselor, and I'm like, it's just Alvin. Like,
Yeah.
And they're like, respectfully, it's not.
Yeah, and I hear
was
that,
like, okay.
and I respect that. I
Yeah.
totally do. It's funny though, when on my first inauguration night, when the whole ceremony thing was done, the clerk said, let's welcome His Worship, Mayor Cam Guthrie. Clap, 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 clap. And then my wife leans into me, and she goes, "Just so you know, I'm never going to call you your worship." So I'm like, yeah, I know. So yeah, I don't know. It makes me feel uncomfortable because I don't want to like try to feel like I'm elevated above anybody.
Of course.
It's just a thing with me, but I totally respect that. People just want to respect the office and the position. I totally get that.
Yeah. Well, you are the chief magistrate.
I
right?
guess I am.
And,
Yeah. Sometimes when kids come by, I'll grab the chain of office and I'll let them kind of like put it on.
Yeah,
a
sit
little
in the
kid.
mayor's chair.
Yeah.
Put on the,
it's just special for them, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Take them around City Hall, right?
Yeah.
I want to talk about some things that have kind of popped up locally recently in southern Ontario, where we've seen a lot of encampments, we've seen a lot of homelessness. Here in Mississauga and Peel region, we're at 400% capacity in terms of our shelter system. We're using our hotels. We've got 11 hotels right now that are full.
Really?
With asylum seekers. We've built 2 new shelters, one that's online in my neighborhood and one that's coming online near the airport in a few weeks. And, there was kind of this, I don't call it an ultimatum, but, the premier put out this statement that said, we're looking for, we want to do more too on encampments, but, let's get some people asking us to use the notwithstanding clause and whatnot. You signed on to that.
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
You want to talk about that a little bit? Because I think there's some concern about that.
Yeah, and that's fair too. Yeah, 100%. I think how to answer that for me is important to sort of state my foundational position around it, and then I'll talk about that. I think it's just easier. Is first of all, we need more housing, we need more shelter, we need the proper funding from the provincial government. This is a provincial issue, like 100%, and we need the care and the wraparound supports for these people because, as probably about 80% of the people are really struggling with addictions and mental health.
Right.
And that's a healthcare issue, and that's not a property tax issue.
Right.
That is a provincial issue. So I just want to make sure that was sort of stated amongst the answer here as the foundational position that I have. Okay, now I'm not dodging the question. Now the notwithstanding clause. So my position, my opinion, and I might be, on my own a little bit on this, but my position is this: if you have a bylaw in your city, and I don't know what yours is like or anyone else's, but that basically permits encampments to be in 90% of the areas in your city, and they can be protected there and left alone. My position is that they then shouldn't be allowed to be in competing spaces that the public also wants to use as well, like a Little League baseball diamond, or attached to a playground, or in a splash pad, or in our downtown cores, like really impacting little small and medium-sized mom and pop businesses. And so I think that's my position, is that there needs to be some public order around this issue. And it's not a this or that issue for me. It's not a, you can only have compassion and empathy for the people that are experiencing these problems, or it's you can't be here. Like it's all wrapped up into one. Sorry, it's all wrapped up into one. You can have, in my view, both public order and public safety and welcoming spaces for all, and you can have empathy, compassion, shelter, supports, and all that stuff. You can do both. And so where I feel that I sign my name to it is really comes down to that position of you can do both, public order and have the shelter and compassion that people need. And I think that's reasonable. I think that's a reasonable position to have. And so the other side will immediately argue like, you're criminalizing people or you're just moving them along. And I would suggest that there are competing rights, whereas the rights for the mom to take someone to their downtown business and they can't get inside, or the mom going to the playground, or the kid that wants to play baseball on the baseball diamond. Right. And, like, there are some competing rights there, I think, is causing friction. And without that friction being fully fleshed out in court or with the provincial government, I think it bodes to say that we might need that tool. And I think it was important too. The letter that I signed said where, I'm trying to remember it, but it said where necessary. Right. So it's not like just flippant
everywhere all the time.
Yeah. No. Yeah. It's not flippant. It's about where necessary. And I think there are cases where necessary, where these shouldn't be in certain areas. That's my position.
I think it was an interesting tactic from the province, and in the sense that it was going back to mayors, to big city mayors, kind of getting you to respond to his, request, or like, who wants me to use this power?
Yep.
And obviously he found a bit of a wedge because not all the mayors agreed. Yep. I think maybe 10 or 12 mayors signed on with you.
There's 15 now. It's growing a little bit. Yeah.
But some of them pushed back.
Some did.
And I've heard some of the criticism around it being, which is why I'm really glad you said that your piece at the beginning about the provincial responsibility to do this, is that whether or not this gives them another out to not address the issue. Because I agree with you 100%. Ultimately, it's up to them. They need to step up to the plate. Yep. They need to do significantly more. How do we get there? Is this one of those tools, or does this, can this give them a bit of an alternative way to not address the problem?
I hope it's not that. I think you just raised a good point. In fact, I'm open enough guy that I would say what you just said there is actually something I'm going to have to actually take away. I think I really appreciated what you just said there and the way that you said it, because you don't want it to be sort of like, okay, we'll just use this tool over here and not address all these other things. I think I would freak out if they did that.
Good.
So for me, it is about like, for me, it's like you should be doing all of these things first.
Right.
Like 100% first. But if none of this works, like, there's got to be some public order as well in my view. So, I appreciated what you just said there. There has been, there's been some mayors that I know that were thinking about signing, and yet they're concerned about signing on now because of some of the pushback. And I will say, from just my own position too, I'm quite concerned that the premier said, why don't you write a letter? And we did, and then nothing has come of it yet.
Yeah. He hasn't taken any action on it.
So I would rather him say, thanks for writing the letter. I'm not going to take action on that because I'm too busy taking action on all the stuff that needs to happen.
Right.
Housing,
Absolutely.
shelter,
Absolutely.
supports, counseling, et cetera, et cetera. I'd be like, great response. I'd be fine with that.
What's your relationship like with the Premier?
It's pretty good. I mean, there's been some times I've had to push. So I say this all the time. I will critique when critique is necessary, and I will praise when praise is warranted. I always say
and that's
that.
really important.
Yep. Yeah, I will always say that. I mean, I do take an oath for my city. Like, it's for my city. And so if something is not going to do well for my city, I'm going to speak up about it. I did that when Kathleen Wynne, I was the mayor when Kathleen Wynne was the premier. So I did it with Kathleen Wynne. I'll do it with Ford. So but there is a respect there. I have pushed back on him and then talked to him. I pushed back on him publicly and then talked to him a couple weeks later. And I'm like, hey, sorry, I had to come down hard on you. He's like, I get it. I get it. You know, so he takes it. I think that I think it's a good relationship. Guelph is a unique position because we have one of the only Green Party members of Ontario as our MPP. So it's it's a very different sort of vibe, Guelph, with calling into the premier or talking to him. So.
How is Mike? You talk to Mike a lot?
Oh yeah, I talk to Mike Schreiner, our MPP, all the time. Yeah, he's a very nice guy. Yeah.
He's a great guy. I've met him a number of times. Yeah. I'm always interested in seeing how well communities can do with opposition members in government, right?
Well, to be, I don't mind saying it out loud. Like it's noticeable, and that's nothing against Mike, but it's extremely noticeable that it's a different thing. And I can say that because I've seen the difference between when Kathleen Wynne was the
you had
premier,
Liz Sandals,
and we had Liz Sandals, who was part of the governing party in it. I mean, we did very well with grants and applications and movement on things that we needed to have, and that a lot of that is sort of dried up a little bit, with a different party. So it's not against Mike. It's just a different party that's there, right? So it's but that is party politics,
right?
And I think sometimes the citizens need to understand that a little bit. Party politics is very real from a federal and a provincial issue as it relates to what's happening in your own city based on who's elected to represent both federal and provincial.
Who's your federal member?
Lloyd Longfield, he's a Liberal.
Yep. And how's that relationship been?
Oh, great. Yeah, we call ourselves the three amigos. We're Lloyd's great, Mike's great, I'm good.
One of the things I'm envious about in terms of Guelph is that you're kind of a self-contained community, right?
Yeah.
And you've got one of each. In Mississauga, we've got 6 MPPs.
Yes.
We got 6 MPs.
Yeah.
We have a mayor and 11 councillors. We've got people from both parties, and because we're next to Toronto, we get lost a lot.
Sure.
Right? We don't have our own media. I think you have the Guelph Mercury.
Not anymore.
Not anymore? Okay.
Online, yeah.
Well, we said that we have the Mississauga News, but it's online only.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's a lot of challenges with getting information out there and getting people to feel a sense of civic pride around this municipality, even though it's part of Peel and adjacent to Toronto. Whereas I think Guelph is probably one of those communities that, I'm from Guelph. And people say that proudly, right?
Yeah.
And you've got that, cohesiveness with every level of order of government because, there's one person each and you know who to talk to and you know who to call to be like, I need you to be my champion with the Prime Minister. I need you to be my champion with the Premier.
That's right.
Right? We're always trying to figure out, okay, well, who do we think has the Premier's ear today?
Yeah, I know.
Or who do we think has the Prime Minister's ear today?
Yeah.
How do we get what's best for Mississauga? And I think that's one of the challenges of being a big city next to a bigger city.
It feels it's actually going to be interesting. In the next federal election, we've actually had a rezoning of the federal boundaries.
Redistribution.
So our city will almost be split
in half.
Almost in half.
Okay.
2 ridings now. One will connect through to Michael Chong's riding.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the other one will be sort of more independent.
So it'll have more rural, likely.
Yeah, it's the rural's taken sort of the south end of Guelph. Urban part, and then the rest of Guelph will be a separate riding. So it's gonna be a little odd. I think a lot of people are gonna be very confused.
Okay.
Because they'll get to a certain line in the city and they'll be like, "Why are there different lawn signs out here?" But I'm like, I don't care. I'm just the mayor. I'm still all Guelph, so that's good.
Cam, I really appreciate you taking the time.
I appreciate you.
I want to get to a couple of quick things, but just before we go, what's your favorite thing about being mayor?
My favorite thing, this is going to sound interesting, but is like helping people on like the small stuff that never gets any airplay. Like I remember helping a lady who didn't get their green garbage bin picked up, and the son called me. The mother was upset, and like, you know, I was like, I'll email the waste department for you, you know.
Yeah.
And I emailed the waste department, and then the next day it's like, thank you, they came and they picked it up. I mean, I didn't really do that's a staff thank you, but it like that doesn't make the headlines, but that matters.
You help someone.
I help someone.
Yeah.
It matters. That's it. So yeah, there's a ton of like I could say like, oh, we did this big thing and we opened this and we did that and financed this and financed that.
Well, that'd be my next question.
That's
you know,
cool,
what are you most proud of?
But the small stuff
what's
is
the big
great.
thing that you're most proud of? But I do remember I dated a girl who went to the University of Guelph when I was in university, and I'd come by, and then I would see like 5 bins. Because you guys were the leader before anyone else had bins like that.
Yeah.
You separated all your recycling, your organics, your garbage, and that was you were leading the way back then.
Well, I mean,
you still have 5 bins?
No, it's 3.
Okay,
it was always 3 bins.
Okay,
blue, gray, and green. And yeah, I'm going to put up my hand. I actually voted against that when it came to council. I was on council at the time.
Okay,
and I was wrong. It's a very good system. Yeah. So, it is. We were leaders, but that leadership didn't happen under me.
That's okay.
And
I mean,
okay.
you're mea culpa, but you're still leading the way, and that's important.
Yeah.
But what is one of the big projects that you've been really proud of?
Well, I would say, again, it might not make a lot of headlines, but relationships are like super important to me. Like, I'm the type of guy that I don't like my head hitting the pillow at night if I know there's an argument like out there.
Lingering,
like, I hate that. So when I first ran for mayor, we had a very big problem with the county of Wellington, which was our social services manager. There was a ton of friction. There was lawsuits, binding arbitration. And there was a joint committee around social services between the county and the city, and they wouldn't even meet anymore. It was terrible. And so one of the things I ran on was restoring and rebuilding that relationship, because the citizens of Guelph, they write like a $26 million check every year for social services, and they hand it over to the county. And I just kind of was like, shouldn't we be at the table? Like, even if we acknowledge that they're the decision makers at the end of the day, like, shouldn't we be at the table on this and like have a good relationship?
Right.
And so I feel most proud actually about restoring and rebuilding that relationship. Because of that, we won the Smart Cities contest across Canada a few years ago. We won $15 million on that contest because we did it together. And our committees are now working together, and we're working better like we've never worked before. It's taken me 10 years to rebuild that, but I'm most proud about that. And I think, I could name this business opened up here, or we did that, or we did this, and I've got those stories, but rebuilding and restoring relationships is so paramount to me, because when the crap hits the fan, you want to have a good solid foundation that you can reach across the table and go like, we got to talk about these issues. And if you don't have that solid base, it's going to be a nightmare. So I think I've set that up for some success, and I'm proud of that.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, that's how we help people.
Yeah.
Right? We have to be able to reach out and talk to those people who can then go and help.
Yeah.
Listen, Cam, this has been fantastic.
Thank you.
There's a lot for other cities, even Mississauga, to learn from cities like Guelph, mid-sized city.
Yeah. Single tier.
Very envious of that.
Yeah. If you have any records or vintage blenders, let me know.
Yeah, we'll bring one over next time.
Yeah.
But really, thank you for your time, and thank you for coming on.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. Take care. So that's it for our episode this week. Thank you to Mayor Cam for coming on board and spending so much time with us talking about how things are better or worse in Guelph than Mississauga. Really appreciate his time. Follow him on X at Cam Guthrie. And please like, follow, and share this podcast, and subscribe wherever you find your podcasts. We'll be back next week with another real interesting guest. Please let us know your thoughts and comments at alvintedjo.bsky.social.